Hello there, everybody, and welcome to LGB Alliance's first monthly roundup webinar with our young ambassadors, Alison, David,
Hi.
and Daniel.
Hello. Hi.
So these webinars are a chance for us to take a look back at the last month or so at all the news and events and social media shenanigans that have been going on that are important for LGB people. So, having said that, I guess we have to start with the sad news that on Saturday there was a horrific attack at Berlin Pride. Unfortunately, an Islamist terrorist drove a van into Berlin Pride, into a crowd, and then got out and started stabbing people. And there was one woman dead, and at last check, there were 29 people injured. The suspect has since been shot dead by the police. So, young ambassadors, sad news to start with, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Anybody?
It's certainly grim, isn't it? It's certainly, you think obviously it's 2026. You think, gay rights are the norm in a lot of the Western world, around the world. You think, we can live more openly than ever. And then, obviously we all sort of woke up, Friday night, Saturday morning to this absolutely, horrific news. And, I'm sure same as you guys, my thoughts are just absolutely with, the victims, the injured, their families. Because, I mean, how do you recover from something like this? It's just, it's horrible. It's one of those things where there's no good news, there's no good outcomes, there's no positive spin. It's just a tragedy, really.
Yeah, I've been looking around at a lot of what people have been saying about what happened, and a lot of people have said like, "Oh, this is why we need Pride. This is why we need gay people to be visible and to be sort of out and proud." And I think that resonates with me. I think that's like quite true. I think, like we shouldn't really have to deal with stuff like this anymore. It's a tragedy that we do. And so I think it's really important now more than ever that we are sort of visible, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's also just a sort of a reminder that, human lives are involved in this. And, it's not just an echo chamber online. I mean, this young lad was radicalized online, very sadly. It just sort of proves that in our activism and, things like LGB Alliance Conference, where we actually get to meet people human to human, it's all the more important. Just kind of have these grassroots in-person connection and not just be sort of in the digital world, really.
Yeah. It's very sad. Well, thank you. Let's move on to something else that's going on. Back to the UK now. End of June, so this is not July, end of June, the government introduced its draft conversion practices bill, which is, of course, a big story for us. It should, of course, be, it should be a good thing to sort of want to ban conversion practices, but as we know, I mean, the bill says it bans abusive conversion practices, but then it goes on to say any practice that's aimed at changing someone's sexuality or gender identity is criminalized, and it introduces conversion practice protection orders. So we have serious concerns at LGB Alliance about this legislation for a multitude of reasons, and I would very much be interested to hear what you three think of it.
Well, I mean, I've spoken to quite a few people about the bill so far, and I mean, the thing that I just don't really understand about it is I don't actually see why it's necessary. Because if you think about conversion practices, obviously it's not a very nice thing, but most of the bad things that happen from conversion practices, like coercive practices, anything that might actually count as physical harm, all of that is already illegal to do. So it seems a bit redundant to outlaw actual conversion practices, because anything that would count under conversion practice is either already illegal or not particularly big. Like, it shouldn't, I at least don't think it should be illegal to hire a priest to try and pray away the gay. It's not going to work, but if I want to waste my money, I can. So I think I don't really see the point. I see why people like it, obviously. Conversion practice is an awful thing. And I've spoken to people who've been through it, and it really sounds terrible. But I don't see how this law is going to, like, I don't see why it's necessary, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I'd also say it doesn't seem to have, like, in terms of the government, I don't get why they're doing it, because it doesn't seem to have sort of resonated with the people they want it to. I mean, obviously, you know, social media, Twitter, Instagram, the last few weeks, they've been full of people who are sort of saying, this doesn't go nearly far enough. And it seems like they're kind of, the government is making both sides of this debate very unhappy. They're not pleasing anyone. They're not actually protecting anyone either. They're not helping anyone, not protecting anyone from actual abuse. I don't really get why they decided to do that now and in this way.
Many such cases.
I think, I mean, there are quite a lot of issues that are coming up. I mean, we are really worried about the chilling effect that it's going to have, because, you know, what happens if a child goes to their parent, a teenager goes to their parent and says, you know, I think I might be born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
And the parent, or if it's a girl, if that parent has known for the longest time, actually, my child is definitely a lesbian. But if that lesbian teenager comes to them and says, I think I'm a boy, what does that parent do? Because this bill says that any sort of economic pressure, any emotional sort of pressure is not allowed. It's forbidden. But what does that mean? It's very hazy on what those words mean, and it doesn't define abusive. It leaves it to the courts to define what's abusive. And as you said, David, strapping electrodes to someone's testicles is already illegal. The corrective rape on lesbians that was done is already very much illegal. So what are the abusive practices that are being banned here?
There was when I read it, forgive me, it was a couple of weeks ago and I read it, so forgive me if I'm misquoting that. Maybe we could put like a banner on the screen of what I'm quoting from. But there was a bit in it about sort of the actions of therapists, and there was some sort of wording around, you know, them being out with what is reasonably expected of them, or some wording along that line. Mm-hmm. I just remember thinking that this could it could be used as almost like using the courts as a weapon, because you could have one therapist that sits down with a client, does his job, actually questions, doesn't, you know, affirm, you know, delusions, and the patient's really happy, the patient's thankful, goes on with their life. You could have another one that then goes through that, and then, you know, it's wielded against them by a politicized judge, by a politicized court. I think it opens the door to kind of selective interpretation, you know, and that you could choose which therapists you punish, which ones you don't, which doctors you punish, which ones you don't, when the wording is this vague and it doesn't give a clear, defined set of what abuse actually is, but it criminalizes abuse.
It seems to me maybe if it's failing to acknowledge the problem that we're having at the moment, where there are straight men that identify as trans lesbians and the way they treat lesbians, does it acknowledge that as some kind of abuse? That's, I think, the questions that need to be asked as well.
Well, yes, I think there is an interesting issue that might come up, that it says any action that aims to change someone from having a trans identity or not having a trans identity, any action in either direction is forbidden. And same with sexual orientation. What we might find is that, in fact, this conversion practices bill, what happens to gender affirming care when that is attempting to change someone's sexuality or gender identity? But I know that, or I've heard that, like there are examples of legislation in other parts of the world where there's a carve out for that in the conversion practices bills, so laws. So that's protected. So I do wonder if that's maybe something that's going to come up.
It does raise an interesting question, doesn't it? Because, you know, if trans men literally are men, if you take, you know, a young lady, she's attracted to other young ladies, and then you transition her to a man, haven't you effectively created, you know, changed a lesbian woman to a straight man under the
it seems like conversion therapy in itself, a lot of the trans activism stuff and the gender identity, because from my perspective, it seems like it's basically just a mill that churns out young, insecure gays and lesbians and attempts to change them into something else. So
many of whom are, as we know, you know, they're autistic. They're not the most social function, the most, you know, sort of socially integrated people. They're vulnerable fundamentally.
Yeah, I wrote about this briefly when I wrote my open letter to my university, King's College London, about the Pathways Puberty Blockers trial. One of the things I wrote a lot about was the fact that actually a lot of this so-called gender affirming care is actually, in its own way, gay conversion therapy. So I think one of the big issues that lawmakers will have to contend with when drafting this bill is that, you know, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you refuse to affirm someone's gender, then you're committing conversion therapy. But if you affirm someone's gender, that's kind of also conversion therapy in a different way. So I think it's sort of stunted by its own vagueness, and I don't think it's a very robust piece of legislation. But we'll have to see.
Yeah.
I think it feels more like an attempt by the government to just do something. They kind of just, you know, said like we need to do something, and they haven't thought about, you know, the second, third, fourth order repercussions. What's going to happen 10 years down the line? What's going to happen when you do have someone who is, you know, sort of mentally unstable in front of a therapist, and the therapist is just trying to do the absolute best they can? What happens in these situations? And I don't think anyone in government has an answer. I don't think anyone who's worked on this legislation, this is just me personally, I don't personally think they have any answers to these kind of big questions that obviously we all know, you know, the bill is going to hit these things at some point.
Yep. Another aspect of the bill, it does introduce conversion practice protection orders, which can be brought to stop someone being victimized by conversion practices. But it's very loose in who can bring those orders, who can bring that to court, and who they can bring it against. Are gender critical beliefs, or whatever you want to call them, sexualist beliefs, being targeted here potentially? We've seen recently in the last week or so that a certain favorite lawfare waging organization, the Good Law Project, has launched yet another attack on sex matters. Is this something that the Good Law Project could, if this terrible piece of legislation passes, couldn't the Good Law Project and people like them try to get conversion practice protection orders against anyone who professes gender critical beliefs openly?
I think they'd certainly try, is the answer. I think they really would try. I don't think they've won many cases, so I might not be too worried necessarily, but I certainly think they would try. They would, and they'd also do a huge media campaign, you know, Helen Joyce is converting, you know, teenage lesbian, you know, they do all this kind of big scare tactic publicity kind of thing. They do it against LGB Alliance. They probably come after us too. It's annoying, but, you know, I think it does leave an interesting legal question in that, you know, away from the publicity, away from, you know, people trying to, you know, bring stupid lawsuits against, you know, big names like Helen Joyce or LGB Alliance or Sex Matters, there are going to be actual, you know, therapists who don't have a huge public platform, who are just trying to do the best they can for very vulnerable gay and autistic kids, who could have, you know, lawfare just absolutely wielded down on them. And I really don't think anyone's thought through these consequences.
And if you violate a conversion practice protection order, you can come under criminal prosecution. This bill is not just civil; it's criminal, and you can be fined, and you can be put in prison for up to 5 years if you break one of the new laws in this bill and violate a conversion practice protection order, or violate one.
I'm just reading through the brief forward on it now. It is very vaguely worded, but my honest sort of question of this is, it seems like almost like a domestic abuser's paradise. I mean, it seems here that, under the order you can have, forced surrender of passports, banning travel abroad, restrictions on travel, this kind of thing. I mean, if someone's in like an abusive relationship or something like that, and they are in this sort of very radicalized TRA world, it just seems like this is another thing that could be used to kind of say, look, this person's trying to convert someone, very coercively, if that makes sense. It's probably the worst way I could have worded that. It's not a very coherent thought. But it just seems, from what I'm reading here, it just seems so vague. And this part about tailored conditions just seems like, an absolute, just a blank check from a legal perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah. I would also say, I mean, you've mentioned it, Daniel, therapists, what I think, or what might be the effects of this bill is that therapists are just not going to touch anyone it's not going to take any cases of anyone who has gender issues.
Absolutely. And we know those are the people that they need the help the most. They need good, honest therapists. And like I said, if the Good Luck Project decides to try and make action against, LGB Alliance or Sex Matters, that's not going to that's going to be a lot of expense, but it's not going to affect anyone's livelihoods. What the effect of that is going to be is that, the nameless therapist who, doesn't have big banking, doesn't make a lot of money, is going to, they're going to out of fear not see the most vulnerable people who they need to, because they're going to see this big lawsuit and they're going to go, I don't want that. I don't want to be anywhere near that. And, the end result is it's actually going to harm the people it's supposed to protect, supposedly.
Yeah. So, and the final group of people I want to mention, I mean, these people, a lot of these people are LGB, but not all of them, detransitioners. What happens when a detransitioner tells their story and this conversion practices bill is law? What happens to the detransitioners?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I suppose you could argue that, even their public testimony could be sort of,
yeah.
and most of the activists don't believe detransitioners exist. So they could obviously try and make some kind of claim of, this person is actually doing a big, prolonged, detransitioner stunt. It's not their honest testimony. It's a conversion practice in the media. Again, another sort of third and second order consequence that the writers of this bill don't seem to have thought of at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see people coming after detransitioners under this bill, saying sort of like treating them a bit like the sort of ex-gays that you see in a lot of conversion practices, because I think people do often draw that comparison, which isn't very accurate. And it's a shame to think about, because so many of the detransitioners who do speak out, they're so brave and like courageous. So it's such a shame, but I could definitely see people coming after them about this.
Yeah, I agree. I think they tend to often compare detransition to other forms of gay conversion therapy, and it's quite a dangerous comparison because they're not looking at the damage that gender identity ideology actually does to young gays and lesbians.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And that they use the word conversion therapy because, as Stephen said, it does bring to mind that kind of, electrodes on the nipples on gay men in, the 80s and 90s. Mm. But what they're actually proposing to ban is nothing like that at all. It's banning therapy, but they are selling it on this idea of, torturing people, basically, and, this very old, antiquated form of gay conversion therapy.
Oh, well, and that leads us actually quite nicely into the next bit. So earlier this month, David and I both attended a conference. So why don't you tell us a bit about that one, David?
Yes, so it was, I forget when exactly it was, I've got it up here somewhere. So I think it was around the 5th and 6th of July. It was the Clinical Advisory Network on Sex and Gender. They had their Rethinking Youth Gender Medicine conference. I must say it was one of the best conferences I've been to, obviously, along with the LGB Alliance's own conferences. And I went with a lot of fellow students because I spoke with one of the organisers and they were interested in getting a lot of students coming along. And a lot of us obviously didn't know much about gender medicine. It's not really, at least it's not my area of expertise. So it was like really interesting to hear from a lot of doctors and therapists and clinicians about sort of what they do. There were a lot of very, not quite niche, it's not the right word, but like quite sort of specific talks. Maybe there's one all about how diagnoses work, which is just really interesting. There was someone from, I think it was the American Plastic Surgery Association, who were very involved with a lot of evidence-based gender medicine. So that was also really interesting. There were a lot of detransitioners who spoke about, and other people who spoke about support for detransitioners, because it's an area of medicine that is really quite lacking, which is really quite disturbing. And actually, I think a few other people who mentioned a lot of the stuff we spoke about the conversion therapy bill, about how it might be used against detransitioners, how it might sort of create more problems than it solves. So yeah, it was a really, really amazing conference. I'm glad I got to go. There was also, if I remember correctly, a big protest outside it on the first day, because it was at UCL. And so I think it was a group of UCL students, I might be wrong about that, who were protesting outside it quite loudly, which I always find quite funny. I always find the protests very funny. But yeah, it was definitely one of the most interesting things I've been to in a while.
Yeah, we did get the welcome wagon waiting for us. That was nice of them. Yeah, there were quite a few interesting talks about the history of youth gender medicine and the impact now on the physical and mental health of the people going through it. And
yeah, there was a really good one. I think it was Elaine Miller was talking about how a lot of cross-sex hormones can cause pelvic floor complications for women. It was really quite shocking, a lot of the statistics about the medical complications in gender medicine. I remember some quite shocking facts. But yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think hopefully we get to go to the next one and the next one and the next one. And, you know, one day, maybe youth gender medicine will have been rethought to the extent that we don't need to go anymore.
Yeah, one thing I would like to sort of suggest is, because it's such an important topic, youth gender medicine, and I would like to see maybe a talk about it at the LGB Alliance's conference next time, because I think that would be very good. I think there'd definitely be a market for that.
Very much noted, and I think you are right. And I do think that I right at the end there was a lot of space for questions. There was a big panel and mostly taking audience questions, and I didn't get my question in, but my question was going to be about what do we do about the homophobia that is driving the current approach to youth gender medicine, which is gender affirming care, so-called gender affirming care. But I didn't get it in. But yeah, I think we do need to address the fact that youth gender medicine is being driven in part, or quite a decent part, given the numbers from the Tavistock, etc., by just not liking gay people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we move on. Alison, you have been involved in writing a book. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, so I have worked with Tonya in collecting 19 stories from young lesbians all across the world, and I really enjoyed doing it. It's called Kindred in Chaos. I'm also on the front cover with Miranda. I really enjoyed the photo shoot as well. And it's just been such a pleasure working on this book. and you have to read the stories in it. They are so great. They show how resilient these 19 young women are in the face of gender identity as young lesbians. Absolutely crucial in understanding what young lesbians are facing in these times as well. So yes, you can find the link to buy the book on the Kindred in Chaos Facebook page. Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll link that below the Facebook page, and yeah, I look forward to reading it. And it was very good of yourself and Antonia and Miranda all to come to conference and talk about your involvement in the book, which
I really enjoyed it.
Good. And now we move to something a bit fun, Daniel.
Fun's a bit of a stretch, but it is media based. So, like many people, I've been watching the new. I love Heartstopper. Okay, it's my guilty pleasure. I do enjoy it. I know it's woke. I know it's full of TQ plus, but I just think Nick and Charlie. It's a nice story. It's the story I wish I had when I was, 15, 14, 13, a few years ago. And they've recently released the newest installment of it, as I'm sure you've all seen, Heartstopper Forever. They've done that bizarre thing where they do like 3 seasons and then they just push out a movie because they, give up halfway through or something. But they finished it off with a movie called Heartstopper Forever. And it is mostly about Nick and Charlie and their lovely relationship. But there's one little scene I want to sort of touch on a little bit. It's a scene where, have we got a clip of it here? I believe we have. Yeah. It's a scene where Nick and Charlie have broken up and Charlie is just not wanting to get out of bed and his friends are trying to encourage him to go to the gay pride parade. So if we could have that clip up, please.
It's a whole thing, and I don't really feel like celebrating the magical wonders of gay love right now. And he might be there.
He being Nick, Charlie's boyfriend.
Charlie, I know you're hurting, but I need you to come and march with me on Saturday because I'm fucking scared. The world hates me right now. The government is taking away my rights and everything we fought for. If I was a few years younger, I wouldn't even have been able to take hormone blockers legally because they ban them. People don't want me using public bathrooms or existing at all. I just want to be myself. To be free. To be happy. And I know you know all of this, and it's okay if you come and cry about Nick all day. But I'm terrified all the time, and I just really need my best friends with me to march at Pride, okay?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on that. Like I said, I like Heartstopper. It is a good show. I just found it really funny, though, that, the gay character is like, I don't want to go to gay pride. And then immediately the trans-identifying character is like, you must, because trans. And then obviously it's just funny that, I don't know what they were thinking when I can only assume when they wrote this scene, they sort of went around the room and patted themselves on the back. It just feels like terrible writing, just having the characters sort of stare into the camera and sort of say like, just monologue kind of political opinions. There's no character, there's no subtlety. It just reads a really sort of weird, bizarre tone deaf scene. And it's obviously, it's so political. There's no nuance. There's no bias. They ban puberty blockers. People don't want me to exist. And it's just such a grim picture to have in an otherwise wonderful series about, young gay love. And it's not accurate. It's overtly political, follows an agenda, and it's just bad writing. I just find it strange they've taken this gay love story and just shoved the TQ plus right in at the end. And then we've got another clip because I was watching some reaction videos to this clip of a popular YouTube commentator who is trans-identified, sort of commentating her thoughts on this scene. Can we get that clip up, please?
It starts with Charlie saying that he's just not in the mood to celebrate the wonders of gay love right now. Little bit of a narrow view on Pride, Charlie, but I get it, you're hurting. But Elle isn't having any of this pity party and says that she knows that Charlie is hurting, but as a trans woman, she's...
Yeah. So as you can see, having, thinking Pride is about gay love and gay rights and gay people is obviously, that's a very narrow view, very bigoted view. But it's allowed because Charlie's hurting. It's understandable because he's hurting. But the gay people must then comply. They must go and march for the TQ plus for some reason. But anyway, I just thought number one, the show, it's a terrible scene because it's just the acting is so wooden. Even if you agree with the political message, it just feels so wooden, just having a character monologue. And then obviously the reaction of most of, the trans rights activists, the TQ plus community, as you saw, is that, it's no longer gay pride. It's queer pride. It's TQ plus pride. We're not allowed to just have a gay show about two gay teenagers. We're not allowed to have a gay show that just shows young gay love. We're not allowed to have a pride parade that is just for LGB people. And I just think, it's a shame because Heartstopper fundamentally is such a nice show for young gay people. But then there's this political message that they just had to pack into it at the last second, and it feels so wooden and just twisted and tortured that how they've tried to integrate it. I'm curious to hear what you guys think of it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you think, like, what does Pride have to do with gay people? Like,
yeah, I don't think a lot of gays and lesbians feel like Pride is about them anymore. It's just completely corporate, and it's just more focused on the trans stuff. Unfortunately now there is a lot of shows that are directed at young people that really kind of push the gender identity stuff, and it just completely ruins it.
Yeah,
it just feels forced a lot of the time, doesn't it? It just feels, they've had like this checkbox exercise.
Yeah, I think I mean a lot of the, I mean, obviously I think you both feel the same. A lot of the young gay people I talk to now really don't feel represented by Pride at all. I mean, I know I've never been to a Pride parade, and I have no intentions of ever going to one because it's just not about gay people at all. And in fact, it's quite a homophobic thing, at least from my point of view. So it's very depressing.
Yeah. The only thing I kind of want to touch on is that it's a great movie, by the way. It really is, and I'm such a guilty fan of the Heartstopper series. I've got all the books because they're picture books and they're easier. And I'm joking. They're really good books. It's a really good show on the whole. And there's loads of other moments in the show. And I talked about this on Twitter the other day. There's a scene in the movie again, the new one that's just out, where Tori's sister, Charlie is sitting with his sister, Tori, and she's talking about her boyfriend, Michael. And obviously, she's a woman, he's a man. They're in a straight relationship. But she comes out to him and she says they're not in a straight relationship because she's asexual and he's bisexual. And now, obviously, he's still bisexual, even if he's, dating a woman. But just this idea that, a man and a woman in a relationship are like they're queer or they're gay too. It's nonsense. Like they're never going to be denied a job or denied housing or called slurs in the street for being in a straight relationship. But obviously the reaction online is like how progressive, how wonderful, and it feels silly to be pretending that like they're victims. This is homophobia. It's like I've been punched in the street for being gay. Like what are these two ever going to have said against them? It really feels like a silly addition.
Yeah, the number of sort of, and I forget who it is, but I remember seeing it was some sort of conventionally attractive straight couple celebrities who were getting married, but I think the woman identified as queer, whatever that means, and the caption of the picture was, "This is what a queer wedding looks like," and it's just two very conventionally attractive straight people getting married. I'm like,
yeah,
what do you even say to this?
Yeah, it's just worse as well when they call themselves a lesbian couple, when the boyfriend calls himself a trans lesbian. I'm like, oh, what is this rubbish? Seriously. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just nonsensical. We're queer.
I've met a couple of like women with husbands and kids, like completely straight, but they call themselves non-binary, and then they say they're in a queer relationship, and it's just like, what goes on in these people's head where they think they can say that, they think they can like be part of a minority. It's insane. It really is. Like, you're not gay, you're a straight couple. There's nothing wrong with that, but like, why are we pretending here?
Yeah. Just goes to show that queer and gay are two very different things entirely. Oh, well, yeah, okay. I think that was a bit of enjoyment, that last little bit there. That was a bit of fun, a bit funny to laugh at these silly ideas.
Like I say, I love the show. I genuinely do. I just wish it wasn't so TQ plus political at times, because Nick and Charlie's relationship is actually really wholesome.
Yeah. I also question the trans characters' understanding of how things are in the UK right now, because all we're saying is all that's being said is to follow the law as written in the Equality Act, that there are carve-outs for single-sex spaces, and if you're male, you don't get to go into the ladies' one, and if that's all that's being really said. But the reaction from that character and a bit online is, this is the most horrible thing that's ever happened.
They clearly want to stop trans people existing, whatever that means.
Yeah.
I always find
it's almost whipping up hysteria, isn't it? Really, in a way.
I always find this thing of like, oh, they don't want me to exist. So like inexplicably strange, and just it's such a weird talking point, but you hear it so often.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a great roundup of the month, and we will be back again next month to round up a bit more and see what August has to bring us. Hopefully, progression against the conversion practices bill would be good, and some more entertainment online would be good. So thank you very much to Alison, and to Daniel, and to David, and see you all next time.